We ended our preceding discussion with an analysis of some of the plot aspects of We the Living. Let us turn now to a consideration of Miss Rand's next novel, Anthem. In Anthem, the same ability to perceive issues in terms of essentials led Miss Rand to one of her most original and inspired literary philosophical ideas. The I is the root of all evil, the altruist collectivists declare. In Anthem's world of the future, the word I has disappeared from men's language. An individual man refers to himself as we and to another individual as they. And the reader is shown the nature of a world from which the concept of ego has vanished. In length, Anthem is closer to a novelette than to a novel. In style and form, it is closer to poetry than to prose. It is by far the most abstract of her works in its method of stylization. It is a projection of the issue of individualism versus collectivism, dramatized in its purest and starkest essence. In the world of Anthem, men are permitted no selfishness. Their thoughts, their occupations, their actions are dictated by the needs of their brothers. All the scientific and industrial achievements of the past unmentionable times have been lost. Men live by candlelight, bleed the sick to cure them of their ailments, and believe that the earth is flat and the sun revolves around it. Having destroyed the independent mind, this totally collectivized society has no power to keep that which only the independent mind can create and maintain. But out of this swamp, one man of rebellious and intransigent spirit arises, who is tortured and threatened with death for the crime of pursuing knowledge for his own pleasure and purpose. He had been ordered by the Council of Vocations to be a street sweeper as his life's occupation. Working alone at night and in secret, he has rediscovered the electric light. The rulers of his community order the light to be destroyed, and he is forced to escape with his discovery into an uncharted wilderness. One of the most beautiful scenes in the book, which is written in the form of his diary, occurs when the young girl whom he loves and who has followed him into the wilderness struggles to communicate her love for him without the use or knowledge of personal pronouns. Quote, "Today the golden one stopped suddenly and said, 'We love you.' But then they frowned and shook their head and looked at us helplessly. 'No,' they whispered, 'that is not what we wish to say.' They were silent. Then they spoke slowly, and their words were halting, like the words of a child learning to speak for the first time. 'We are one, alone, and only, and we love you who are one, alone, and only.' We looked into each other's eyes, and we knew that the breath of a miracle had touched us and fled, and left us groping vainly. And we felt torn for some word we could not find." Close quote. The hero's struggle to identify and name the concept of I is developed with such tension that when, after pages of we, one sees the opening line of the climactic chapter, the emotional experience is one of unsurpassable violence and power. I am, I think, I will. It is illuminating to note, in passing, a crucial difference between Ayn Rand's projection of a totally collectivized society and the projection of such a society in Orwell's 1984, written some years later. In 1984, what is presented is a super-industrialized, superscientific civilization. Orwell and many authors who have since written similar books may believe that totalitarianism is immoral, but they do consider it practical. They share the premises of those they denounce, at least to this extent. They believe that it is possible to enslave man, to rule him by brute force, to forbid independent thought, and yet somehow to keep and continue all that which is the achievement of a free mind. Ayn Rand knew better, and years later in Atlas Shrugged, she showed fully what industrial civilization depends on and what happens when human intelligence ceases to function. One of the most impressive examples of Ayn Rand's power as a plot writer is the climax of The Fountainhead. To appreciate the ingenuity of the climax, consider the personal contexts of the leading characters and their relationships to one another. Consider the conflicts and problems which the plot has set up and the manner in which the climax integrates and resolves all of them. The first note of the coming climax is sounded when Peter Keating asks Howard Rourke to design the government housing project, Cortlandt Homes, and let him, Keating, take the credit. The project involves enormous architectural difficulties, and neither Keating nor any other architect has been able to solve them. Years later, Keating had graduated from architectural school with honors on the day when Rourke was expelled. In school, Keating had often gone to Rourke for help with his assignments. Later, when they were both in practice, Rourke struggling desperately, Keating rising to the top of his profession, Keating had gone to Rourke again and again for help with his work. Keating is the second-hander, the man without independent values or judgment, the man who lives through and by others, the borer who originates or creates nothing. Rourke, the independent innovator, the egoist, the man who lives for his own sake and by his own mind, the man who refuses to compromise his convictions, has fought a battle of 18 years against the society around him. Now his architectural ideas are beginning to win. He is still denounced and opposed, but clients are coming to him in increasing numbers. Keating, having ridden for years on a prestige he had not earned, is now slipping. Another fashion is replacing him, and he is terrified. Rourke agrees to design Cortlandt Homes for Keating on one condition, that it be built exactly as Rourke designs it. It is Ellsworth Toohey, the architectural critic, who secures the government commission for Keating. Toohey, as a second-hander, moves solely by a lust for power. He preaches altruism and collectivism. He hates Rourke and has been seeking to destroy him. He has worked to build up the careers of mediocrities like Keating in order to close the field to the Rourkes. Now, after years of plotting and scheming, Toohey is at the height of his fame and influence. His specific goal at present is control of the Wynand newspaper chain, for which he works as a columnist. Gale Wynand is the great tragic figure in The Fountainhead. He has risen out of Hell's Kitchen by his own prodigious effort to the position of owner of a publishing empire. Having succumbed in his youth to the belief that virtue and integrity have no chance in human society, that life among men is inescapably evil, he concluded that one's only choice is to rule or be ruled, and chose to rule. He has poured his energy and genius into the creation of a vast newspaper chain that does not express his own values or convictions, but panders to the worst and lowest values and tastes of the mob. This, Wynand believes, is the path to power.